Next up, let's talk about one of the more powerful visualization features in Power BI, the ability to drill up and drill down. So imagine that you have a line chart, but instead of a single date field on your x-axis, you have multiple fields like this. What this is going to do is essentially compress all of those different views into one single visual and allow users to use visual header icons to drill up or drill down to switch between different levels of granularity. So for example, you could use that single up arrow to drill up from a weekly view to a monthly view, or the double down arrow to drill down from weekly to daily. You're essentially giving users the ability to change the grain of the data without having to create multiple versions of the same chart. Now, there are a couple other visual header icons here available as well. The single down arrow allows you to activate something called drill mode. And in drill mode, users can actually click individual points on the chart to filter and drill down at the same time. And I'll show you exactly what that looks like in just a minute. You also have the forked arrow icon that expands each level of the hierarchy. It's not active for things like line charts, but it's commonly used in matrix visuals to create that kind of pivot table effect. So quick pro tip here, we're going to do some practice using date fields and date hierarchies, but you can use location hierarchies and enable drill mode to create some really cool interactive map visuals as well. So that's our high-level overview. Let's jump into our AdventureWorks report and practice adding some drill functionality to our visuals. All right, so let's go ahead and start in our product detail tab. And what I'd like to do here is modify the x-axis for these two area charts that we created, showing weekly profit and weekly returns. I want to make them a bit more dynamic, a bit more flexible, in case users want to see this data either at a lower level of grain, like by day, or higher by month, or even by year. So let's go ahead and edit our weekly profit chart. We're just going to get rid of the start of week field. We're going to add that date hierarchy that we created right here. We can click it as a single object, and that's going to show all the different levels that it contains: year, month, week, and date. And once we've done that, now we have these visual header icons that allow us to drill all the way up to the highest level of data, which is year, or down to month, week, or day. So that in itself is a really valuable piece of functionality. Note that you can also turn on drill mode, and now check this out. If I hover over a specific data point, like the month of March 2022, for instance, I can just click. That's going to take me down to all of the weeks contained within that month, and I can click again to access the daily level data for that particular week. So notice how I'm kind of filtering and drilling at the same time. I can also use the tooltip to drill back up as well. Now, one word of warning here, you can get some kind of weird truncated date periods when you're using drill mode. For instance, here I'm looking at weekly data, and one of my weeks looks very, very low. When I drill down, I only see 4 days represented here, whereas if I drill back up to another week, I see a full 7-day week here. And that really depends on the time periods that you're drilling into. Sometimes you can cut off weeks or days and end up with a partial view of the data, like I just showed. So there are a couple ways to handle that. For one, I could simply disable drill mode, for instance, or I could actually edit the x-axis fields and remove something like start of week from that hierarchy. And if I did that, then I could drill into years. Each year would contain all months, each month would contain all dates, and so on and so forth. It would get rid of that kind of partial data issue that we've seen in the past. In this case, I do want to keep the weekly level of granularity, so I'm just going to keep drill mode deactivated here. And let's go ahead and drill back down to our weekly view by default and go through a similar process for our returns area chart. So we'll get rid of start of week, pull in that date hierarchy, looks good. And then we can drill all the way up and then back down to month and to week. So we're essentially back where we started, but now we have these controls that give users a bit more flexibility to change the grain of these area charts. Last demo that I want to walk through here is on the Exec Dashboard tab. Remember that we created this weekly revenue trending chart for our executives, but suppose we've realized this is a bit too granular. Right? If this report is really going to be consumed by top level executives, maybe weekly is just a bit too detailed. Let's take a similar process to what we just did here. We're going to pull out start of week, but now instead of grabbing the hierarchy, which is even more detailed down to the daily level, I can actually grab individual fields and kind of create a hierarchy of my own. In this case, let's grab year. Let's add quarter from there. And then month as a third level. And that's the deepest we're going to go. Grab start of month here. You'll notice that our forecast dropped off, which I think in this case is just fine. Now we can go ahead and drill up and see those different levels of granularity. And there's our forecast applied at the highest level. Let's actually pull that off. We can keep the trend line for now. That looks just fine. And why don't we drill down to quarter? That looks good. And one more time to month by default, which I think again is going to be a more appropriate level of detail for executives. It also aligns nicely with our current month KPI cards here beneath the chart, and it gets rid of that partial week that we had noticed earlier. So I'm happy with this. I think the final tweak that we need to make is to update our chart titles, both here and on the product detail tab, because we're no longer just looking at weekly revenue. We're now looking at those metrics by whatever level of detail happens to be selected. So let's go ahead and double click. We'll use the on object formatting option here to change this to revenue trending. And that's going to be valid whether you're looking at this yearly, quarterly, or monthly. Same thing with product detail. We're no longer just looking at weekly profit. We're looking at profit trending. And same story for returns. Return trending. So there you have it. Those are a few examples of how you can add drill up and drill down functionality to line and area charts in Power BI.